Now that you've learned how to gather insights for your communication strategy, it's time to look at how you should actually put it together. What are the things to pay attention to? How can you make sure that you create a strategy that would really add value to your organization? There's a lot happening in the world in terms of the economy, in terms of the political landscape, in terms of government policy that is impacting on organizations, whether it is for profit or non-profit. So how do you make sure that you take all of the insights, all of the trends, and use them to make decisions on what strategy to adopt, what tactics to use, and how you can position your organization for relevance and profitability going into 2024? And that's what we're going to look at in this video. Okay, so now let's talk about how to actually put together your strategy for the new year. I'm not going to go through the rudiments of creating a communication strategy. I already have the bite-sized comms course on strategic communications, which will break that down for you. And I also have a video on my YouTube channel, which is on the comms planning process, which you can watch if you haven't watched any of those. This basically is just going to talk you through the things you should be thinking about and putting into consideration as you prepare for 2024. So where do we start from? In the previous videos, I've shown you how to gain insights. I've shown you how to do your review for this year, looking at what you've done and reporting. And now we're looking at the future. How do we start? Before you start working on your strategy for 2024, you need to do both internal and external analysis that will allow you to get useful insights that will form the foundation of your strategy. As I always say, don't create any strategy without insights. Don't create any strategy without data, because there's nothing to back up the assertions or the presumptions that you are making in that strategy. And what these insights will do for you is that they will help you to define your approach, and then they will also help you to define what tactics would work for you. And that's why it's also important to review what you did this year. There's no point doing the same thing next year that didn't work this year. And you need to understand why it didn't work. Is it that we just need to do away with this tactic, or we just need to tweak it a little bit to find that sweet spot, and then we can implement or grow it further in 2024? So still on where you should start from, these are the essential things that you need to know, or the information you need to begin to gather. What is happening in the economy where your organization is based? There's a lot happening in the global economy, different nations, the different things happening. What is the macro economic condition? What are the forecasts? What are people saying? Are they saying there's a recession coming? Is inflation going to continue to rise? I know you're a communications person, but these things have implications for your organization. If cost of living is rising, if inflation is rising, that means that the spending power of your audience is reducing. It then means that when they start thinking of cutting, and we're going to look at that in consumer trend, when they're thinking about cutting costs, if your organization's products or services are not like topmost, or they're not that beneficial, they're probably going to cut it off. So that's why it's actually very important. And what is happening in the global economic landscape? So we saw the Russia-Ukraine war. There's just a lot going on across the countries in the world. So where are people leaning? There's food crisis looming, different things. And you just need to do a Google search. Again, the previous video, I've shown you how to look for all of these insights and trends to just see what has an implication for my organization. The thing with this is not everything applies to your organization, but at least knowing them will help you to say, okay, this applies and this doesn't apply. What is happening within your company? That's so important. Is your company going through a restructuring? Has there been a merger or an acquisition? Is there a new CEO? Because that dramatically changes things. I remember someone that they had done their communication strategy, and in the new year, a new CEO took over, and that significantly changed things because the new CEO came with his own perspective and ideas of how things would be done. So you need to be thinking about what exactly is happening within this organization. And then you also want to be thinking about what is happening within the sector or the industry. industry, for example, are we seeing a shrinkage or is it expanding? Are there opportunities that we're not yet tapping into? Are there policies that's having an impact on our organization or the kind of business that we do? You need to really think about that. What is happening with your consumers and your target audience is so important. There's a lot happening. Again, in consumer trends, I'll just talk you through some of the things that I found quite interesting in doing this research. You need to think about those and what is happening with your people. And by your people, I mean your staff. A lot of times we forget our internal stakeholders, our staff, our employees, because they should actually be your number one brand advocates. They should actually be people that you're gaining insights from. So don't ignore your people as internally. Now, let's look at the external analysis. So from an external perspective, you really want to look at the macroeconomic, not just economic, but the macro environment. Yes, that's what I want to say. The macro environment in which your organization operates. And your analysis can go from the economic side of things, you can look at political, and then you can look at consumer related analysis. So you want to do it from two perspectives. And one framework that I really, really like is the PESO framework, which is used to identify the macro environmental factors that influence an organization's business. So PESO is political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. So you're looking at this different aspect, what's going on, because a policy can come up now and that threatens the existence of your business. I was reading the news a few days ago and there was something about a policy in a certain country that's affecting the operation of Airbnb. And I was like, wow. And that's how it is. But imagine if you're not aware of it, imagine if you're not taking that into consideration in your planning and your strategy. What is topical now for governments, for example? What is topical in terms of environment? We know that climate change is really, really topical. How will our organization align in terms of climate change, in terms of sustainability? You need to be aware. And then you now want to look at consumer trends, which covers shifts and changes in consumer behavior and attitude. And when there's an economic crisis, recession, or just generally things just change, to be very honest, you need to be paying attention to it because it also impacts on how your audience would engage with your organization, with your brand, your offerings, and all of your services that you may have to offer. Now, this is the PESO analysis, and this image, I like it because it has like examples of what typically goes under each of the pillars. So you have political, so tax policy, Brexit for those who are in the United Kingdom, trade policies, political stability, and this is particularly of note in African countries. Currently, there's elections going on in different countries. How does that impact on your organization? There's a country that there was a coup, just really looking at, is this country stable politically? What is the atmosphere like in terms of politics? Government policy, I've given you an example, is going to be very, very important to know where is government leaning in terms of the policy direction. You want to look at the economic analysis, that's the inflation rate, exchange rates. For those of us in Nigeria, we know that this is currently a big deal. Economic growth, you want to look at interest rates, you want to look at disposable income, and this is particularly important where your consumers are concerned, because as disposable income shrinks, it then means that people have to make more stringent choices on what they purchase, services they engage, goods they buy, and that can impact on your organization, on employment rates. You want to look at social lifestyle attitudes. Are people becoming more healthy? Are people, adopting a particular mindset or view? Cultural barriers, population growth. If you're in a place where population is shrinking, or maybe, for example, the number of old people are increasing, you don't have as much young people because people are not giving birth, whatever the fact, you need to think about how does that demographic spread impact on what we do as a business. You want to look at the average population age, health consciousness, and this will be important for brands that sell fast food. For example, if you're a fast food brand, you sell foods that quote unquote are not considered to be healthy, and you have the consumers becoming more health conscious. What does that mean for you, for your organization? Do you want to advise your organization to branch out into the health segment, or are you going to try and position health benefits of certain products that you have, or you're going to do some sustainability initiatives with regards to health? But I will put a warning on that. If you're going to do that and you're selling products that have a lot of sugar, there's a mismatch there. So you must have authenticity, otherwise it will become greenwashing. And then your target demographics, you want to look at the technology side of things. What is the level of innovation? Now we know is artificial intelligence, virtual reality, all of those things are now like top of mind. Cybersecurity, what are the technological changes? Are people moving from mobile to voice, or they're having on-demand service, internet speed, availability? All of this has an impact, and they are more business considerations. But remember, again, if you've watched my bite-sized comms course on strategic communications, being able to understand the heart of your organization, whether it is for profit or not for profit, helps you to develop better strategies that will be aligned to what your organization wants to achieve. You want to look at legal, employment laws. So for internal communications, how does that impact on your organization? Discrimination laws, health and safety, copyright, consumer safety. I just had a long rant about consumer protection with regards to a certain brand. I'm not going to name names, but that's something to think about, because I just thought to myself from a communications perspective that if this brand had communicated better, if this brand, because I went on their social media pages and exactly the issue I had was what a lot of people had, and it's going to become a crisis. And I will do a bite-sized comms course on crisis communications. It's just unfortunate that they have let that issue go out of hand, and it's regarding consumer safety. A simple thing of their operations could have changed, their communication, their engagement with the consumer could have really, really changed it. But now their perception is now negative because they haven't adequately dealt with this, and legal action can actually be taken against this organization. And the final one is environmental, which I've talked about before. Climate change, environmental policies. You have more and more countries now bringing in policies with regards to the use of single-use plastics, or with regards to making sure people are recycling or reusing their carrier bags, that's their plastic carrier bags, NGO pressure advocacy, recycling, pollution, sustainability. So that's what you have there under the PESTLE analysis. Then after you do the external analysis, you then go and do the internal analysis, where it's really about your organization and really understanding what are the strengths of this organization, what are the weaknesses, what is our value proposition, what is that thing that we can hone on. And it's not for you to make an assumption. And that's why I said you really need to be speaking to people and get feedback, because you can think, oh, this is our value proposition. But when you interview your stakeholders, you realize actually our customer audience see a different kind of value proposition. So the question is, can we merge both, or do we need to expand on or explore this value proposition that our audience perceives that we have? So you need to do a SWOT analysis. You will need to research on and gain feedback from your consumer, from your stakeholders. So people that actually use your products or services, not just everybody, right? You want to look at those that could be interested. You want to also look at your stakeholders that are currently engaged, because they know about your organization, they've experienced your organization, so they can speak about their experience, they can speak about things to change, improve, or what it is that they really like about your brand, whether it's goods or services, or even if it's a non-for-profit, in terms of your volunteers, in terms of people that are donating, what is it they like about your organization. And so you want information about industry positioning. So you're at the end of the year now. Your organization's industry position, did it rise? Did it fall? Did it stay the same? And why? I always encourage you to ask why. So the next one is, did we make a profit or a loss? Just to say, wow, this organization made a loss. Why did we make a loss? You need to be able to ask these questions. Us making a loss, for example, was it because of a reputational issue? Was there a crisis? Was this an economic factor? You need to know, because then you're able to factor those things within your communication strategy. If it was a reputational issue, how you would tackle it would be different from if this was simply purely an economic thing. People just don't have money as much money to spend anymore on the kind of products that we offer. So if that's the kind of situation, then I'm thinking to myself, what can people afford? Can we create something that people can afford but still brings value to the organization? Because you can't meet the need of the consumer to the detriment of the organization, right? So I'm engaging marketing to say, is there a middle ground that we can explore? Is there a way, maybe should we think about expanding into other markets? Now, you say to me, Adedoyin, that's not a communications consideration, but remember, your goal is to become a strategic advisor to your organization. So you need to think literally 10 steps ahead and be having this conversation. And that's how you get invited to the table. So when they're having business strategy conversations, because they see how you're thinking, they will know that, yes, you have to be there on the table. But anyway, this is not why we are here. And then the final thing is, what economic or political indicators may affect the organization? And I've talked a bit about that. Now, the SWOT analysis, I believe we all know about the SWOT analysis. So I'll just run through this very briefly. You're looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So in strengths, what are the things the organization does well? What are the qualities that separate your organization from the competitors? What are the internal resources? So you have skilled staff, tangible assets. What makes your organization really, really stand out within the industry? What are the weaknesses? So the things your company lacks or doesn't do so well, think your competitor does better than you, resource limitations, maybe your unique selling proposition is just not very clear. And then what are the opportunities? Are there any underserved markets for specific products? Maybe there is a product offering that you can tap into because of the trends and the changes and the shifts. Maybe you have a particular product that you can begin to push based on those shifts in trends. Are there fewer competitors in your area? Is there an emerging need for your products and services? And that's why you need to pay attention to trends, because a trend can come up that makes a particular service or product that you have, but a hot cake. And maybe before last year, this year, nobody really paid attention, but because of these shifts, and if you think about it ahead, because there's always that first mover advantage, right? So if you are on top of it and you're like, I'm seeing this certain trend, let us reposition or let us craft the messaging of this product, of this service, of this business in this way so that we can leverage and take advantage of this emerging trend. And then it puts you at the forefront of that trend or the opportunities that come with that trend. So that's why you really, really need to be paying attention. Press media coverage, threats, are there emerging competitors? Are there policies that is being debated right now that could just extinguish your entire business? So that's the change in the regulatory environment. Maybe there's negative press coverage, changing consumer attitudes towards your company. Like the example I gave you, this organization, more and more people are becoming frustrated with them, and it's all over social media. And I'm not going to be surprised if I wake up one day and there's a lawsuit against this organization by the Consumer Protection Regulatory Body. Okay, so after you've done your internal and external analysis, here are some emerging trends that I think that you should note. I found them interesting. The thing about trends is that there are a lot of trends. If you Google 2024 trends, you're going to see a lot. So I just decided to highlight the ones that I found interesting in 3 categories: general business / industry trends, comms and PR trends, and then consumer trends. So remember that we spoke about consumer trends at the beginning. So starting with the general business / industry trends, this one from the Boston Consulting Group, the BCG, is one that I found really interesting. And they said that to be an industry leader in 5 years, companies need a clear and compelling generative AI strategy. Now, I'm not going to go into the difference between predictive and generative AI. If you don't know, please read up on it. The CIPR has a very lovely report on that you can learn from. But what I really want to show here is that your organization needs to have an AI strategy. There needs to be a plan for AI. So you're not just adopting AI for communications, you're adopting AI into the operations of the organization. And I know that that goes beyond you, right? But it's something you need to begin to ask. What is our plan for AI? How are we incorporating AI into what we do, so that your organization doesn't now have a knee-jerk approach to AI, because it's only going to be expanding and expanding and expanding. And then if you then decide to have a knee-jerk approach, then you do something that puts you on the verge of a crisis because you didn't manage it well, and you don't really want that. I've only highlighted one trend here because the truth is that the business trends are really going to be contextualized to your particular industry. So the trends that will be useful for you, for an organization, for example, that is in the financial industry, is going to be different from an organization in the technology industry. If you remember the last video, I already talked you through how you should look for these trends and insights so you can be very, very specific and take the ones that apply to your particular organization and industry, or the business that your organization does and the industry. Then the one that concerns us really is the comms and PR trends. And I found this very interesting, not because it's new. I mean, we've always talked about it, but it's going to become increasingly important due to factors such as shrinking disposable income, inflation, people's perceptions, mindset. Is going to be more important to now have customer experience and engagement, to have a focus on that, because there must be a reason why people engage with your brand. There must be, because now people are looking for value, and that experience is where value is going to be. That engagement is where value can be defined. So you're finding that brands would now emphasize a more personalized interaction and long-term relationships, because if people are cutting costs, your organization should not be the first, or your product or your brand, your service should not be the first that they cut off. And what's going to guarantee that? If they have some sort of personalized interaction and you've invested in long-term relationships with your consumer. And in this as well is that AI, because the AI is coming again, is going to play a pivotal role in delivering this personalized customer experience. So you can know for each customer what is important to them. And what this does is that it really just collapses the time that you will need to research. And you don't then continue to send a one-size-fits-all communication, because honestly, one-size-fits-all communication is no longer working. You need to be able to segment your audience based on the normal segmentation principles of demography, psychography, but also in terms of their needs, also in terms of what is important to them. And AI is going to be very, very useful for that, so that you're getting higher levels of engagement and conversion. So they're not just seeing your newsletter and they're just pressing delete, right? So that I found to be very, very interesting. So you need to be thinking about, what can we do to become more personalized in our interaction? What can we do to improve our customer experience? What can we do to make our customers feel special, to feel a part of our brand story and our brand journey? And that's going to be really, really critically important as you are going into the new year. Still on some emerging trends to note, customization. Now that's like the first one. The first one was focused more on the consumer experiences and engagement, but now customization is saying, how can we have a targeted and personalized approach? Remember, driven by technology, driven by data, driven by consumer preferences. It will be very important, especially those of you that work in like the FMCG, or you have goods that now maybe they're no longer affordable. You're thinking, how do we customize our product? How do we customize with regards to consumer preferences? But remember, it has to align with, okay, is this profitable for the organization? Because at the end of the day, if it's not profitable for the organization, it's not going to be sustainable, right? So you can begin to ask questions. So what things like this do for me is that as I begin to think, okay, can we do this? Can we do that? I'm speaking to different departments and saying, what's possible? Can we do this approach? What if we do that? Because there are cost implications to certain decisions, right? So you need to be able to know, is this feasible? Can we try this? Where is the executives? Where are they leaning towards? What can this do in terms of the bottom line, especially, for example, if it wasn't a great financial year for the organization? And then video marketing has solidified its position as a powerful channel for audience engagement, and it's expected to flourish in 2024. And we saw a lot of that this year. There's a lot more video content. So you see TikTok, different YouTube as well. There's YouTube Shorts now. So you're finding short form video content. So you need to think about, how can we leverage video more impactfully? Because there are two things to balance, and we will look at it in consumer trend. Now there's a lot of videos. It's like everybody's talking, right? So how are we going to make sure that we're not adding to the noise or the clutter? How are we going to make sure that our video content, or all the content that we create, our go-to content for our consumers, or even people that are not yet consumers. How do we make sure that the content we create actually converts people? Because at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want the visibility, you want the engagement, and finally, you want the conversion that leads to, in terms of a sale, subscription, whatever it is, that brings some sort of income for your organization. And if you work with a nonprofit, that brings donation or goodwill towards your organization. And so increasing the use of video to narrate captivating brand stories, showcase products, and forge deeper connections with the target audience will be important. So you need to really, really think about, how do we want to leverage video? What kind of stories do we want to tell? Do we just want to show? So let me use an example. This is a cup. If I'm selling this cup, am I just going to be doing a video of somebody drinking the cup? What can I do to show the value and the benefit of this cup from the perspective of my audience in the videos that I create? Do I want to tell them the benefits of the materials? Do I want to tell them how they can customize their cup? What do I want to show them that will make them say, wow, this is really valuable, this is really interesting? Do I want to create a series, for example, and every video in that series adds valuable information? Do I want to bring together cup collectors to share their stories of collecting cups and then why they like our cups? So in fact, it wouldn't even be about our brand cups, right? It would just be the story of cup collectors. But at the end of each episode, they're seeing our own brand. So maybe in the background, you're seeing, for example, our cups on display, and then we're having a conversation on cup collecting. I don't know if there's any such thing as cup collecting, but I hope that this example brings it to light, right? So that's how you need to be thinking about it. How do we want to, I think one thing I should say is that video content helps you to humanize your brand. It helps you to make people feel connected to the people that are the owners of the brand, so the executives. And it can be a situation where you take us behind the scenes, how this product is created, the factory line, what are their stories. There's so many things that you can do. So think really critically about how you want to leverage video for 2024. And then consumer trends. There are lots of consumer trends, but these are the ones I found interesting. Lifestyle shifts, so seeing that a lot. So you can find that people are redirecting their spending, people are cutting costs, they're asking themselves, is this essential? So more and more people are eating out less. You find that people are embracing cooking healthy foods by themselves at home because people are becoming more health conscious. They're calculating returns and benefits, even in every category of spending. So even if they want to splurge, it's like, okay, what perks? So if this service, I want to go to this spa is $50, for example, but this other spa is costing me $60, but it's giving me 1, 2, 3 additional perks, I will go with the $60. Or some people say, no, this is cheap, it's $50. So there's just, people are looking for value, seeking how to maximize value from every purchase. Or some say, for after the 2 visits, for example, your 3rd visit, that is 50% off. And that is just the reason why I'm going with this spa. It's not necessarily because they are better than the other brand that I was using. It's because in the long run, it's going to be cheaper for me to use this brand. And then you're seeing more prioritization of self-care. So the conversations of mental health is going to continue. What I found interesting, because I also had this conversation, is people detoxing and unplugging from social media, because there is a lot of noise, a lot of content. There's just a lot happening, and people are just begin to, because of mental health reasons, because of self-care, they begin to say, look, I need to unplug, I need to detox. And then fractional lifestyles, I found this very interesting. And the concept of fractional ownership is that consumers come together and they purchase, whether it's a property. So this is more famous or more popular with regards to real estate. So they come together and they buy maybe a property, an apartment, or wherever it is. But in my mind, I'm thinking about, how does this apply to other goods and services? And I'm also thinking, for example, how does this even apply in the way we offer our services? So if you're a travel agent, customize something for 4 friends, that makes it even cheaper, allows them to spread the cost, and think about it in terms of group. It may not be applicable to all organizations, but it's something to think about. I just like thinking when I see a trend, when I find something and I say, how would this apply in this scenario? What are the implications of this? So if you're thinking fractional ownership, how can we bring people together? There's something that I saw, I can't remember which particular, I think it's a financial literacy brand, and what they're doing for Christmas, because Christmas is where you tend to spend a lot of money, you're buying food items, is to say, join this package, contributes 25,000, and then when we have 100,000, this is what you get, this is what. So it's like a group purchase. So you don't necessarily need a whole chicken. So 5 of us come together, we buy the whole chicken and we split the chicken amongst 5, which makes sense. Especially, remember, disposable income is shrinking. So you need to think about that for your organization going into next year. How can we leverage that power of community? And that's something else that will continue to be a trend, community, so that people are coming together, building community around that brand, but also making sure that you still have income coming into the organization. And then, as we've seen this year, it's going to continue next year. There's going to be an increased focus on brand purpose and social responsibility. Please avoid greenwashing, because what you're finding organizations, they're just painting the surface. It has to be deep. It has to go into the culture of the organization. It has to go into the mindset of the organization. It has to go into the operations of the organization. And yes, it goes beyond you, but you need to be emphasizing the importance of this being authentic to the DNA of the organization. That is only when it will ring true, because consumers are placing greater importance on the brand's values, social responsibility, and purpose. So your senior leaders must embody this as well. So it's not about you say one thing or do another. Consumers are going to be less forgiving of things like that going forward. And then I found this interesting about the use of voice, because yes, voice has been an emerging trend, but more and more it's going to be a strategic tool for organizations next year in terms of your communication tactics. So you find that businesses that leverage podcasts, videos, tutorials to engage their customer can create deeper connection and reach a broader audience. That's someone said to me, everybody is now creating a podcast. I'm not suggesting that you add to the noise. I'm suggesting, how can you leverage voice to educate your consumers about what it is that you are offering as a brand, to educate them about your values, to talk to them about the things that are important to them, to even create a platform. I've always believed that sometimes it's not even just about you launching a platform. Sometimes it's about you creating a platform where your consumers can begin to express themselves. So let's use the financial literacy example. So this financial literacy brand, for example, launches a podcast where real life, everyday people can come and talk about their challenges in terms of saving, in terms of investment. There is a relationship coach that I follow her content, and on her YouTube channel, her podcast, she brings people and they ask questions, relationship questions. It's like Q&A thing, and then she answers it, but it's so relatable. It's like an everyday kind of thing. People send in their questions and she answers, and sometimes she brings like 3 or 4 people of the target audience to just have real conversations, to say, this is our struggle, that is what we are struggling with. And it's funny how not only is it relatable, she's also able to get insight that helps her to shape, okay, this is the next book I'm going to write, this is the next service I'm going to offer. And then you've given people a channel of expression. You're giving others answers to the things that they've been asking and nobody has been able to give them answers to, but most importantly, value. So when they think about a brand that is beneficial, that answers their question, because at the end of the day, your consumers don't really care about you as an organization. It's really what's in it for them, right? So voice, you need to think about, how can we use podcasts, videos, and tutorials to really create that education, to really, really push that messaging of the value and benefits that we offer. And by incorporating personality and storytelling into your content, you can have a lasting impact on listeners and viewers, which then increases brand awareness. Because if I've listened to something and I really like it, I'm going to talk about it, and then I will share it with my friends and get my friends to subscribe. How did I find this relationship expert? Somebody recommended, I was like, wow, this is so great. Her book, I have recommended her book now to I don't even know how many people, because I read the book and there was so much value, but her book came from real life insights, and that's also valuable. So I always learn from people that are using strategies that work, and I say, what is the lesson here? How can I apply it to the organization that I'm advising, or how can I apply it to the organization that I'm engaging with? So that's something that you may also want to think about. Now, I've said a lot, and that's just even it's not even 1/4 of the existing trends and insights that you can get, but those are the ones that I found interesting. But to streamline, because again, you can't do everything and it's not wise to do everything. If you want to narrow down, what should you narrow down on? What should you focus on? Definitely, you want to focus on reputation. It's going to be very, very important because now consumers are thinking about credibility, they're thinking about integrity. So the reputation of your organization is going to be very important. The second thing you want to think about is profitability, because if your organization is not making money, it's not going to exist, right? So you want to think about, how is this strategy going to improve profitability for my organization? You need to think about industry leadership, because industry leadership comes with its own advantages. So how would I position my organization to be a leader or to be the top 3 in terms of industry leadership? You want to think about connection and engagement. If your audience, if the people that you are selling to, if your people that you want to reach out to are disconnected, they are not engaged, your communications plan, your tactics, your messaging is going to be dead on arrival because they're not going to engage. And so you need to make sure that you are focusing on connection and engagement. You want to build loyalty because it is harder for you to gain a new customer. The existing people that are buying from your brand, that are subscribed, that are plugged in, how do you make sure that they stay plugged in, they stay engaged? And then how do you make sure that word of mouth, using word of mouth marketing, you leverage on that and they bring in more people? So you need to hone in on customer loyalty. You need to hone in on what is important to them. You need to hone in on driving value for them so that they are not dropping your organization because of financial reasons, or maybe your organization just slacked on a particular thing and they jump, especially if you're in an industry where switching costs are really, really low, right? And then you want to think about resonance. Where is my target audience? What is important to them? And how does my organization, how does our messaging fit into that? Because resonance is going to be very, very important. So you don't have to focus on all of these. These are just some areas that I'm just putting here to say, look, maybe you say you're going to focus on reputation. Definitely everybody is going to focus on profitability. Even if you're a non-profit, you need to have money, right? So you need to think about it. And then you think about, what do we want to prioritize based on what it is that we do as an organization. So to wrap up, these are just a few things that you should think about as you create your comm strategy. Number one, even in the face of a lifestyle shift, how can we make our brand a go-to for our consumers? There's things that no matter what situation is, cost of living crisis, people will still buy food. It's just the type of food that is going to differ. So how do we make sure that our brand remains a go-to? This may mean that you create a new product line that caters to the change in disposable income, whatever implication it will have for you as an organization. But you need to ask, if people are making lifestyle shifts that is going to impact on us as an organization, how can we still stay relevant even with those changes? How can we provide relief for our consumers as they grapple with the pressures of inflation, recession, climate change, geopolitical instability? This means that more than ever, your organization needs to be empathetic. Your organization needs to really, really put itself in your consumer's shoes. And it's going to show in the way you communicate. It's going to show in the kind of content that you put out. It's going to show in the kind of customer experience that you actually create. How can we create more meaningful experiences for our consumers? Because when the experiences are meaningful, they know that this is a valuable brand. This is a brand that cares. This is a brand that really, really shows that, is beneficial to us as their customers. And then how can we help people to safely unplug from social media? And if more people are unplugging, how do we make sure that our brand and message still becomes top of mind wherever they are unplugging to? And someone will say, oh, I don't need people to unplug from social media. I need them there. You don't have to do it on your own. You can partner with a wellness brand that does a maybe 1 day or 4-hour detox kind of program that goes through maybe yoga, whatever it is that people do. There's so many of these programs now, is to really say what fits into our brand, what fits into our personality, and then create that avenue for your audience to just come, spend the morning just going through wellness exercises and unplugging. That would be so beneficial. And then if they do unplug, how do you still make sure that, they still have your brand messaging? So what are the kind of content that you can create that offline still reaches them? And that really depends on the kind of particular business that you're in and specifics with regards to your target audience. But you need to start asking these questions. So other things that you want to think about in your activities, how can you help people to improve their productivity and wellness? Like I mentioned in the other point, it's not just about you trying to do it alone. You need to think about other brands, organizations, and influencers that you can collaborate with to achieve this. So it's just that synergy, and you need to think about synergy, because you can't, I think that's also a trend. It's not about doing things alone. It's about what are the strategic partnerships and collaborations that we really need, that will help to amplify our brand messaging, that will add value to our target audience in terms of what they need, what they require. And that puts us as top of mind when they're thinking of valuable brands that they engage with. And you also want to think about how you can help people to connect with one another. Connection is so critical. And that's why community is going to continue to be an emerging trend, because more and more people need community. So you're helping people to connect better with one another. So you're doing consumer events that bring people together. So they're creating connections with one another. They're also creating connections with your brand as well. And then how can you further build community? If your organization is not leveraging the trend on community, please start. It's very, very important. And there's so many ways to go about this. And, just making sure that people stay connected in a way that is seamless, in a way that really, really adds value. And you find me saying this a lot: value, value, value. What value are you adding? What meaningful consumer perks can you infuse into your offerings? Yes, you need to infuse consumer perks, and they don't have to be costly. Organizations think that perks have to be expensive, but they really don't. It's just something that really shows that you are listening. It shows something that shows that you are in touch with where your consumer is and what their concerns are. And then in what way can we co-create with our consumers? This is something that I love. And I think it's a big opportunity to bring your consumers on board, to say, in fact, you can just have something, maybe let's call it a focus group. You bring them in and say, we understand that cost of living crisis, how can we help you, what can we do? It would just be so surprising, the kind of ideas that we'll get. But you can only do this if you've actually been a brand that actually engages and listens. But even if you're just starting, you'll really find that the information you get will be really, really valuable to you. So that's something that you should think about. So again, like I said, all of these, it's not you must do all of this. They are just really considerations. These are the things to consider. These are the things to bear in mind. These are the trends you want to be looking at. This is how you need to think about your strategy. And when you're putting it together, you pay attention to the external, you pay attention to the internal, you pay attention to the emerging trends, you pay attention to where your organization is and where it should be in 2024. Then you can then say, this strategy is what is going to get us there. And these are the tactics that we're going to leverage. And then you can add the others, which is your budget, your timeline, and all of that great stuff. In summary, you need to put your consumer and your people, by your people, I mean your employees, at the heart of your strategy, because it's going to be more and more about people. I spoke about empathy. It's really going to be about the people, gaining the insights, responding to their needs, adding value to them. And it needs to be clear how your brand will be valuable, how it enriches their lives. Even if you're selling chocolate, there needs to be value. There's a value proposition that goes beyond even the product that you are selling. So you want to think, what is in need for my consumers? Why should they choose me? Why shouldn't they drop us or move on from us? But as you do that, you need to balance it with what is in it for our organization. Remember, you can't just focus on your audience or your consumers, and you're not thinking about, is this going to be profitable for our organization? And what you then need to think about is, when you find out what's in it for your consumers, what it is that they need and want, is to then say, how can we take this and create a value proposition that is profitable for our organization, that is sustainable? Because you don't want to do something in the Q1 of next year, you're like, yeah, this is so good, and then by Q2 you're losing steam, Q3 that thing is already dead. So you really want to think about the longevity, you really want to think about the sustainability, and beyond that, you really want to think about how communications can be a driver of growth within your organization, whether it is for profit or not for profit, so that by this time next year, you're really showing, this is how we came into this year, these are the activities that we did, and these are the results that we gained, and this is the value that we've added to our organization's overall goals and objectives. So thank you for watching. In the next video, I'm just going to be sharing with you general tips and hacks for successful implementation of your comms strategy. Thank you for watching.